Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of the Weekly Review. My name is Mike Larkin, and joining me today, as always, by my side is the dead man of RWT, Mr. Paul Morales. How are you, Paul?
Good morning, my friend Michael.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, it's morning on my end. It's afternoon on yours. So
yes,
here we are.
Here
by the
we
way,
are.
happy Sunday. Hope you're having hope you had a good weekend. No
good.
hookers and blow for the weekend, so we're okay.
Yeah, no hookers and blow, but I got to say it was a good and productive weekend nonetheless, my friend. And speaking of productive and eventful weekend, let's start with this just because I want to get it out of the way. Goddamn Uncle Dave. So we'll start with this one just because he can't stop. So we're gonna just start with this one just because. And you brought this to my attention. I saw it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first of the many in the Uncle Dave saga of what I'd like to talk about. So here we go. Wrestle Talk. Shout out to Wrestle Talk. Dave Meltzer has compared the G1 Climax match between El Phantasmo and AEW's Konosuke Takeshita to WWE SummerSlam in this week's Raw, saying the match has made him realize he overrates WWE something fierce. I'll tell you, when I watched that match, they're just on a different level. It was like when I was thinking about how good Monday's show was, and it was a good angle show, and some of the matches were good, and some of the matches at SummerSlam were good. Then I watched that match, Takeshita versus El Phantasmo, and it's like, man, I overrate WWE something fierce because compared to this, they're not even the same. They're not even in the same thing. These guys were so incredible. No disrespect to Phantasmo and Konosuke Takeshita, but WWE SummerSlam and Raw, especially what we got this past week with the Fallout and the pay-per-view itself, Dave, you are on crack, man.
Dave is always on crack. It always seems like every single week there's something new that he says that all of a sudden it sounds like Dave seems a little bit bitter because people call him out on shit and people talk a lot of shit about him. And then I end up finding out that he's blocking pretty much a lot of people that call him out. You know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to call out Dave, and I think I'm going to wait for him to block me. Not that I'm anybody or anything like that, but
of course not.
You know,
but
when at least when Dave blocks you, you become somebody.
Oh, yes. Well, first and foremost, I would be on that list too as well because of his bullshittery. And I pulled this one up as well, Mr. Paul Morales. So Dave would then go on to say, Dynamite did 622K and a 0.19 in the demo, expected range given the Olympics. And hi, Dave, I'd like to argue and thwart your point here. Raw was on Sci-Fi, and it did 1.7, 1.8 million on a different channel. And I'm going to say this, Dave, I said this in the last show, Paul. I'll reiterate my point. Dave, when you're talking about the 18 to 34 demographic and how it was low in that range, that's been killing them. That's been killing them. You and Brian sat there. It's been killing them. It's been killing them. How about the product sucks? How about you just admit that AEW, and as you and I watch each and every week, as do many of us, it is an ice-cold product right now. And I will tie this into the AEW talk when we get there, but it's a cold product right now. Like, Dave, how about you just say that the product sucks? It's okay. A lot of us can go out and say the product sucks. There's many aspects and different intricacies on that show that are good that we like, but overall, the product is cold and it sucks. And we got 2 weeks to this doggone Wembley thing. So what are your thoughts on this? Can you use the Olympics as an excuse anymore?
You can't use the Olympics as an excuse when you were pretty much pulling in the exact same numbers prior to the Olympics happening. Mm-hmm. When you were pulling up maybe just a couple of thousand of 100,000 of maybe 100,000 of an increase, but you can't use the Olympics considering that there's the time difference between here and France. A lot of the events usually start sometime in the very, very early morning, which would be early morning for you, mm-hmm. but very early morning for us here on the West Coast. So by the time the evening comes around, it's pretty much a replay of everything that already happened. So if you're basing everything that on the Olympics and saying, oh, well, people don't watch during the day, people watch at different times. Of course they do. But throughout the day, they also catch up on them, especially when they're in other countries. In 2028, guess where it's going to be? here in LA. So we are going to get a whole lot of the West Coast feed, and it's all going to be perfectly fine and cohesive for everybody else. So guess what? That's not going to be an excuse, or that could be an excuse. Anyways, my base is that if AEW, a bit of a rant, by the way, if AEW was producing a better product week after week after week. I'm not saying WWE is perfect, because by any means we know Triple H has his moments, but for the most part, over the last year or so, it's been really, really great. Kind of reminds me of the Black and Gold brand when it first when Triple H had it as his baby. But if AEW was pulling in not the bullshit that happened last night on Collision with Swerve and Ishii. Yeah, with him and Ishii. Oh my God, that was the most horrible piece of crap. How is he your champion? And yet he looks like he's just some flaccid penis just out there trying to hit this dude.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And yes, I said it. I pretty much just called. And I'm not saying Swerve is a flaccid penis.
I know.
I'm saying the match was pretty much like a flaccid penis. And I keep saying flaccid penis because it was horrible and couldn't get, and it never got up, as you could tell. It wasn't ready to go per se.
It was not.
My issue has always been the same thing. It's consistency with AEW. If there is no consistency in the product, then how are people supposed to get invested? I want them to succeed because I would much rather them succeed and be a success alongside WWE and alongside TNA and alongside any other promotion out there. I want to go back to those glory days of the NWA, WWE, AWA, all the other promotions small promotions that used to be out there back in the 80s and early 90s. That's what I would like for it to go back to. But unfortunately, we can't get that if Tony Khan doesn't release his, I don't know, his flaccid penis.
Flaccid penis. Well, the problem that I have, Paul, before we, you'll see the footage here in a second, as you can see in the background. But, it's one of those things where what I hated about it, too, as well, and I'll follow up on your rant, is that Swerve has been this babyface for months now. Ever since he won, everybody's been behind him becoming the world's heavyweight champion. But now, since you got Bryan Danielson putting his doggone career on the line, it's like we're going to flip the script. He's going to become a heel again. And it's like, why are you cutting his fucking nuts out? Because, and I'll compare the main events to people. We're going to talk about the Wyatt Six later and how emotional that was. But when your main event of Dynamite this week is Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett in 2024, when you have Jeff Jarrett, who, again, this makes no goddamn sense, because it makes sense that he's a face now from the Owen thing, but it's just like, hey, Brian, you know what? You got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You got to take this seriously. And then Brian's like, he's right. I need to take this seriously. Then the week later when he cuts the promo, God damn you, Jeff Jarrett, for telling the truth. I want to face you next week, and it's going to be no holds barred. And then they do the match, and it's like, all right, whatever. And now you have Hangman Adam Page, who wants Swerve, but he's got Jeff Jarrett over here. And I'm sure we're going to get Hangman and Jeff Jarrett, and Jay Lethal's over here. I don't like how he's talking about Jeff, so I'm going to challenge him to a match. And then somebody who's trying to make sense out of this, I saw this on social media. Somebody said, oh, well, with the history of Adam Page and Jay Lethal, they were friends in Ring of Honor. Notice how he didn't touch Jay Lethal. And I'm like, unless you're a diehard Ring of Honor fan and you really paid attention to that, nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. So that's my little rant because of that. But I also would like to add to this because I have it up, and this is the sequence that we're talking about. That was shout out the Pro Wrestling Counter for this. Here we go for this bullshittery. This is what we saw last night on Collision.
The world champion won it. Where were you in the ring? He said that in the ring last week. You saw that. Some can try and turn it anyway.
That was that, and then the follow-up was even better. So Pro Wrestling Council writes, this is actual dog shit. Rob Van Dam comments, I want my money back.
I'm telling you, it makes no sense. None of it. Nothing of it makes sense. And that's the worst part. It's a dog shit freaking match. They did nothing with it. It did nothing for Swerve. It made him look like an idiot. And how are we supposed to get invested in him as a champion? And this basically tells me, guess what? Swerve is losing.
Mm-hmm. That's
and if Brian is putting his career on the line, that tells me he's winning. That tells me that come January, when all this happens in Tokyo, his last match is probably going to be there, and he's going to end up retiring either as a champion or dropping the championship to whoever he needs to. And honestly, I'm not invested in anything for All In. Really, I'm not. It doesn't get me hyped about the card when all AEW is doing, specifically all Tony is doing is giving us dog shit like this.
My thing is too, and I'm glad you brought this point up. So the dog shit aside, and there's the I want my money back with Rob Van Dam, you silly son of a bitch, and I love you, Rob. But here's my thing too as well. Like you mentioned, it's very reminiscent of Sting. Tony loves him some Sting. Tony loves him some Bryan Danielson. So much like you, I'm thinking to myself, Swerve needs this win. It's a big win. But also at the same time, I could see him putting Bryan as the champion because he loves Bryan Danielson. He wants to give him that send-off. And also the fact that, it's just it would behoove Tony because Tony loves him some Bryan Danielson. And he wants everybody to go out on top, much like he did with Sting when he was the World Tag Team Champ with Darby Allin. But the issue here, too, as well, like you mentioned with this all-in card, and we're 2 weeks away, and we're going to be talking about it as we do, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, or ugly even. But the last match that they announced, Paul, was last night. And on the 0 hour, folks, it's now going to be Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii against Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. Mm-hmm. First off, the general consensus of this match, I legit thought that they were going to do that CMLL Women's Championship with Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander based off what we saw in Dynamite. But the basis of this match is, oh, you hate Stokely too? Let's have a tag match. What? Like, out of nowhere.
I saw that interview in the ring, and then Chris Statlander said, we accept, and Stokely's just like looking at her like, wait, what?
What?
Like I said, it makes no sense. And I get it. He wants to do he has this whole mantra of doing stuff for the sickos, but not everybody wants that. Not everybody is back to those days of just putting stuff together for the sake of just putting it together. Not everybody likes that. And if you want to draw people in, I say the first thing you have to do is stop talking about WWE. You don't need to talk about what is going on over there. I can now it kind of makes sense as to the mentality that Vince used to have of staying in your lane, staying in this focus, because the minute you get out of focus and you start, talking about other products and stuff like that, it fucks up your how people are looking at you. Because I remember when the NWO first started, I remember how often that Kevin Nash would mention it, or how often Hulk Hogan would mention it, how often they would just mention it because they were taped. At the time that Eric Bischoff would talk about, them being taped and, the stuff in advance, the whole Mick Foley thing, that Mick Foley wins the championship. Look at what happened. Now, my issue is like you're continuing on this road of where people are just like, I'm just put off by what you're putting out there. And it's continued this whole time. So we're just not invested. A lot of people are just not invested. Is the wrestling good? Probably yes. For the most part, yes, the wrestling is good. Yay, kudos to having good wrestling. But when the product isn't producing enough storylines for people to get invested, they're just not gonna get invested.
And I'll add on to your point, Mr. Palmarella, is Dynamite this week. Yes, because people are going to be enticed to tune into Shibata against Brian fucking Keith. And again, we've said it many times. I'm tired of the fucking learning tree. Can we end this? Because Hook comes out, there's the signal, takes out everybody. If this doesn't end with Hook finally beating Chris Jericho and winning the FTW title back at All In, then what the fuck is the actual point, number one? But number two, this should not be just an actual matchup. This should just be Hook coming in and squashing Chris. Chris just takes some time off and goes away. That's how I would book it. And I just want to see this if you just come to an end. Mariah May and Via Van, nothing against Via Van. She's a very good talent in her own right. But Mariah May and Via Van, okay, whatever. And like you mentioned, Brian and Jeff Jarrett. MJF and Kyle Fletcher, which if I'm looking at that, that's really the big main event. Why we couldn't do that as the main event. But
yeah,
right.
Why was that the opener of
Right.
of Dynamite? Why? It made no sense. That should have been that. For as good as that match was, it could have ended Dynamite, and that probably would have ended it on a high note.
But no, Tony, and here's the thing. That show started off hot with that being a good like lead-in for the opener, but then they like dropped to like 522,000 by the end of the night because, again, people were just like very meh on it, and it kind of dips. And then when you have Bryan Danielson and Jeff Jarrett as your main event, and then anything goes. Oh, by the way, not only do we have that, but since we're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Ricky Steamboat, come on down and do some commentary for us. Like Ricky Steamboat had a mothballs just because we're in North Carolina.
Yeah, what the hell does Ricky Steamboat? I mean, I understand you're in North Carolina. Yay, quick pop because he won the championship there. But
Crockett.
I mean, but it made no sense. And I get, that they went away from having Ric Flair and the company and whatnot, but in all reality, it stuff that he does, it just makes no sense. You understand?
I feel you. I'm right on that same level with you, Mr. Paul Morales. And now we're going to get stuff that didn't make sense, but also at the same time, good God, was this funny. And we're going to play another clip here. This is AEW related. So, ladies and gentlemen, we showed the promo again on Collision last night. But during Wednesday, a certain commercial popped up during this, and here we go.
The question is how much you're willing to sacrifice for it.
Why take less when you can get a beefy 5-layer burrito, a Chalupa Supreme, a double stacked taco, and a drink for just $7? It's Lux for less. Introducing the $7 Lux Cravings Box, only at Taco Bell.
Brain the past. The question.
I got to say, after watching
That got me hungry for Taco Bell.
I got me hungry for some Taco Bell.
Made me want to run for the border.
Hell yeah. Now, your thoughts on the Taco Bell played during the Jungle Boy commercial. We had Domino's with Jericho and Nick Gage. Now we got some Taco Bell.
No, hell no. I will never eat Taco Bell again. Sorry, I am not trying to be sponsored by Taco Bell, but I'm sorry, my cornhole does not love Taco Bell. Except for a bean burrito. That's probably about the only thing I'll eat from there, but
Did you say my cornhole?
and maybe some cinnamon twists, but other than that, don't get me started on anything else there.
Did you say
That'll ruin my. I will have a bowel movement like nobody else's business. Not that anybody needs to know all that business, but I'm just telling you.
Just put out there that your cornhole doesn't. You, Mr. Cornhole over here. You just put that into the universe.
My name is Cornholio.
My name is Cornholio.
Are you threatening me?
Are you threatening me?
I need TP for my bunhole. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, okay,
All
so
right,
now we got that out of the way.
We're
Okay.
gonna go to some ratings
This
now.
was hilarious. You have to admit that this was the most hilarious shit that's ever happened to AEW. Right in the middle of his damn promo,
I agree.
or right in the middle of a damn vignette for him, and that just set people over. And Twitter was ablaze. I'll tell you that much.
Well, it's like, I'm going to be serious. You got to forget about the past and move forward. By the way, have a chalupa. So it's just like, have a chalupa. So we're going to go to
have a $7 deluxe box. That's what you got to have at Taco Bell, especially with a drink. Ooh.
Woo. So
Yep.
now, speaking of woo, we're going to go to the Meltzer star ratings for SummerSlam. Oh, all right. So here's where the star ratings for WWE SummerSlam were. Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, 3.5 stars. Braun Breaker and Sami Zayn, 2.5 stars. LA Knight and Logan Paul, 4 stars. Nia Jackson Bailey, 2.5 stars. Drew McIntyre and CM Punk was 3 stars. Gunther and Damian Priest was 3 1/4 star. Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa, 4 stars. Your thoughts?
Dear Dave, you're a fucking moron. Sincerely, the dead man of RWT. Look, here's the thing, is that I like Nia and Bailey. This is probably Bailey's best story. The reason why I say that, and it shouldn't be said, was since she won the title at WrestleMania, she's been in this like vortex of like nothing. And she's been in tag team matches. She's had a few singles matches, but she hasn't really had anything of significance as being a champion. Yeah, she won the championship. Yeah, she won Royal Rumble. Yes, she won. She had a nice interaction with falling out with Damage Control, which propelled her into the championship. But what did she do after that? Nothing. Somehow, this little interaction with Nia all of a sudden boosted like her championship, and unfortunately, she ended up losing it to my girl. But of course, anyways, I think Dave is just falling off his damn chair one too many times. Either that or he didn't take his amnesia medicine fucking this week, because those ratings sucked. I mean, those ratings sucked monkey balls. They told stories. Every single one of them had a story. Even Braun, losing to Sammy at the last PLE, and then winning the championship here for him in front of his dad, in front of his uncle, made it that much more special for him. I don't understand how he comes up with these ratings. And it's just like, if you're not entertained, then you're just kind of like, and I bet you anything, he probably gave that Cody Solo match a 4 because Roman came back.
Right. So people who don't be ignorant, I'll be blocking you. The ignorance of Dave Meltzer here. So here's my thing, like you mentioned. Braun Breaker and Sami Zayn was a short match, but the story of Sami beating him and then Braun's like, that's a rookie mistake. I won't make that mistake again. For the time that they got, it made sense. It made Sami look good, but Braun at the end overpowered him. The Nia and Bailey, look, the powerbomb spot, like everything that they did, the Samoan drop on the outside, whew, and Tiffany coming in at the end. Again, we talk about the story, but it also shows Nia and how hard she's worked to get back to where she is, and her being the dominant heel and Bailey being that sympathetic but also dominant babyface. They both look good. They've always gelled well. Drew McIntyre and Punk, I guess, for what he thought the angle, that was 3 stars. That match told the story. The fact that he got him up for the CM Punk and he saw Seth with the necklace on there and everything that we saw, and it's just like the whole everything that went into that. It's just like, of course he's going to be pissed. And then Drew puts it back on his friggin' arm, the band and everything. Just it's like there's stories,
but it furthers the story,
right?
And it continues it. Now, mind you, this is the first match that they've had.
Once.
This is the first match that they've had. And this is Punk's return in 10 years to WWE. Yeah, he was in the Royal Rumble, but that was only for a little while. And then it wasn't really a match, one-on-one match. This is his first one-on-one match in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that they did this, the fact that they continued a story between him and Drew for nearly 6 months past, him getting injured at Royal Rumble. Come on now, how many companies or how many people are still going to be invested with 2 people who are both injured, who both became injured, but they're continuing the storyline? This, I'm sorry, but that's a 5. To me, that's a 5 because it produced a lot and it furthers the story. We don't know how much further this is going to continue to keep going.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. That's why I look at him when he does that. Or a better example, if Morgan and Rhea Ripley only 3.5, I'm like, Dave, like this story and just her putting her shoulder back in.
And it's still going to continue.
Right. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't understand how he rates this. And it's dumb. It's just everything. And Cody and Solo being 4, like, oh, all right. But you know what he's probably like, I got to take a star off because the Roman thing was predictable. So what? Everybody was invested over 600 million or whatever the hell it is on social media. People wanted to see Roman come back. They were chanting, we want Roman. Triple H has done what Vince McMahon hasn't done with Roman Reigns in 6 years. He's got him over as a baby face. He has done this so well. This was booked to perfection. And Gunther, Damian Priest was booked to perfection. Every single one of these things, again, it's ridiculous. But if this was in Japan, this would be over the fucking moon. So I'm sorry, but he's just so hypocritical and grumpy towards the
I think, in all actuality, I think between the 7 matches that they had, I have at least it's at least a 3.5 and above for every single one of them.
Agreed. And I mean, you said it perfectly, and we touched upon this last week. Eric Bischoff calling him out for his BS. Like, why are we listening to him? He's a liar. He's a hypocrite, and he's just a clown. And one of the things that Paul wrote in our notes that I thought was hilarious was that he's tired of commenting on how ignorant those two idiots sound every week, and that Brian Alvarez is a piece of shit too, which he is to the farthest degree. My thing with Brian is, like, again, he doesn't call Dave out enough on his bullshit. I mean, he'll say something like the Tony Storm clip that we played where they were debating it. But Brian is just even worse with how he talks about NXT and this show and that show. And I'm like, Brian, like, NXT is actually a good show. Like, stop hating on the fact that Javon Evans, didn't win the world title, or they had him lose so quickly to Shawn Spears. I'm like, again, you got to build these guys up by working with the veterans, man. And Javon Evans still gets a huge pop each and every time. Like, look at the vignettes they're doing with him now on NXT, talking about growing up being a wrestling fan, talking about his parents and everything. Like, come on now, man. And you have to let it build, Brian.
Exactly. And that's just it. Is like, they're not doing enough. Thea Hale.
Yes.
Thea Hale, look at what she did with Roxanne Perez. That match was amazing. And it just propelled her into a different stratosphere. Just as a singles competitor, forget that she was in a tag team at one point in time, but as a singles competitor, she has just propelled herself into a different stratosphere right now. And it was all thanks to Roxanne Perez. And if that's what you need, and you need a stepping stone, and that's where it's going to help you out. And imagine, Roxanne's only 22.
Right.
Thea Hale's only 22.
They're both very young.
That division is well taken care of for some years to come.
That's my thing, too. It's like you build it around the Rocky type vibes of Thea coming back from last year, losing to Tiffany Stratton. And this, like, again, it told a great story of her 1 year growth, being Thea Hale. Like, and I'm going to say this right now as we're talking NXT. And it was unexpected for me because I was shocked. It's like you're watching at the end because Axiom and Nathan Fraser and the Rascals had an amazing main event. Then they're bringing them up. It's okay. We'll get it back. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take. We're going to get these titles back. And then you see Trey crying and Wentz is crying. And you're like, you see the setup, right, of the camera angle and the view. You're like, okay, they're going to turn on Wes. Here it comes because Wes is this big-ass baby face. Then boom! Super kicks to Trey Miguel. Low blow to Zachary Wentz. That's your brother, man. What are you doing? And then just kicking and throwing Trey Miguel into the barricade and then the double knees to Wentz in the steps. Wesley as a heel, I was not expecting. I was generally shocked.
I think it puts him in. I think he needed this. He needed something different. Yeah, he was just this cool little baby face for a while. He had his back injury. He came back from it. And he needed something after that Obafemi loss. Mm-hmm. And he needed something to draw him in to the fans, and at least for his character to evolve. And this right here, this, especially as to his friends, the guys who were his best friends, this turn will only help him in the long run.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And speaking of turn, I mean, you got a lot of people turning on two people. Well, we'll start with this one. First of all, stop fucking threatening Jimmy Corderas and his family because of the shaved chair shot. And Jimmy Corderas talk about how ridiculous it is because a chair shot is a chair shot to the end of the impact. And QT Marshall said what he said. But the main point about it is if you're having a discussion and a dissertation, so to speak, don't threaten Jimmy Corderas' family. Like, what the hell is wrong with you people just because you want to disagree and Jimmy Corderas is an old head or whatever he is. He's an old guy, whatever. Which, speaking of this, I had to bring that in because this ties into the coach. Our boy Jonathan Coachman called out Mercedes Moné, as did Eric Bischoff, for being a terrible promo. Like, she's meant nothing. It's just a terrible promo, what have you. And pretty much said that she doesn't really boost anything for AEW. It's still going to stay complacent where it is. And then Mercedes Moné comes back with, I'm sick and tired of these old heads coming at me talking about my promo skills and what I do. And I'm like, okay, you could say what you will about Jonathan Coachman, but he has had so many memorable moments as an announcer and a backstage interviewer, the stuff that happened with him and The Rock, and he is well known for his tenure and his hard work within ESPN and WWE respectively. So don't disrespect the coach for someone who's been around the game so long as he has.
Especially someone who evolved from where he was at.
Yes.
And then he became a better mouthpiece because of WWE. And he learned under Vince. Now, mind you, it was at that time during the Attitude Era, and he continued to keep producing and getting better over time. And dude can speak about anybody anytime he wants to. And then calling out Mercedes for the bullshit that she does on the mic, because it's boring.
She sucks.
No offense, but it's boring. And she could talk shit to whoever the hell she wants, and and not take the criticism well, because that's she's acting like a spoiled brat, literally.
Do I even dare to mention how cringeworthy that promo exchange with her and Britt Baker was this week on Dynamite? Dude, it's a big match, but I'm like, you have not invested me on to really want to see this match. And you've also, at the same time, my friend, ruined Camille for me, because this woman has not been on TV in months. She signed so not long ago, like months and months and months ago. She hasn't been seen in months. We have not seen a Camille sighting. Then she comes out, takes out the enhancement talents that she's working with. She takes out Britt Baker. Camille is what doesn't invest me is you made her Diesel, and you put her with the quote unquote Shawn Michaels, Mercedes Moné, and I'm like, I know where this is going. It's going to wind out that Camille's going to get pissed by Mercedes, and we're going to get Mercedes and Camille, which I don't want to see, number one. But also, number two, to establish Camille, just have her be the monster of the division. She doesn't need Mercedes Moné. She could just be Camille, like she was in the NWA. Like, we don't need her as her bodyguard.
Do you remember how they had Jade, and Jade was pretty much going through everybody? Pretty much like Goldberg was.
Yes.
How they had her on that streak and whatnot. They could do the same thing with Camille. And Camille is a really, really good wrestler. She's Goldberg sucked.
Oh yeah.
But the fact that she has a really, really great wrestling technique, and for a big girl, yeah. And I don't mean big that she, big, but she big as in girls like what, 6'1"?
6'1", yes, sir.
Yeah. And then she wears heels. Good Lord.
So I
want to skyscraper.
Dan Spivey, Mark Callis says hello. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Right.
So,
no kidding.
Hell to the yeah, man. So we'll go to the All-In card next, because we touched upon it earlier before we move on to other topics. Here's a card, like we mentioned. We mentioned Statlander and Stokely against Willow and Tomohiro Ishii, Tony Storm and Mariah May, MJF and Will Ospreay, Jack Perry and Darby Allin, and Taco Bell as a special guest referee, Mercedes Moné and Dr. Britt Baker, the Casino Gauntlet match for the future AEW World Championship match. Is this where we see the debut of Ricochet?
Probably.
Yeah.
Either that or All Out in the 2 weeks after.
Okay. The Patriarchy against the Bang Bang Gang and the House of Black in a three-way. Oh, all right. So the finish last night with this is we kind of knew it as Christian was the ref. He screwed them both, so they made it a triple threat, which, by the way, Tony Khan, you put Christopher Daniels in charge, but it's like, why don't you just be on TV already? We saw it on Collision. Like, the Young Bucks, Tony Khan overruled the suspension. Why don't we just show Tony Khan? Like, why? Like, we know, like, this, who's in charge here? Because the Young Bucks are acting like we're cool and we're in charge, but then here comes Tony Khan. What are they doing with this storyline? Like, really? And they have Christopher Daniels at not so Adam Pearce. What are we doing? What are we doing?
They went from being super hot when they started that whole, we're in charge crap, to just being there. Mm-hmm. They're nothing in the company. It would be different if week after week they were the ones that were being, the focal point of everything. Kind of like Evolution.
Yes.
How Evolution throughout their whole run, pretty much their whole run, they were the lead for the most part of the show. And they had a great run with the four of them together. Problem is that this run with the Bucks, nothing. There's no fire, no nothing. In the beginning, like I said, the first couple of weeks, first maybe month or so, it was cool, but ever since it's crap. And nobody cares anymore.
Well, speaking of not caring, and you shouldn't care about this, and I'm going to just put this out here because I really don't feel like playing the clip because it's going to get me mad. Vince Russo took another shot at the goddamn Wyatt family and the Wyatt Six. And just, bro, they did wrestling moves. They killed it in only a matter of weeks. Bro, they came out and did wrestling moves and beat up Chad Gable and the Creed brothers. They didn't take anybody out. They just came out and did wrestling moves. Well, they're wrestlers, and it's a wrestling television program, Vince. Like, they didn't need to come out and do like they did the first week where they just chaos and everybody's laid out in blood and whatnot. The story is they took out Chad Gable. They haunted Chad Gable because they're taking out people who took out their families. And Alpha Academy was his family. And that led to Chad just being haunted, the introduction of each and every one of them of why they're doing this. And that would lead to the match, the 6-person match after we saw the attack last week, the 6-man tag, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that's the story, Vince. That's the story of how we got here and the layers and the subtleties, the intricacies and nuances. Bro, you're all about character. And they built the characters by showing the VHS tapes each and every week. For someone who's all about the characters, bro, you're kind of very hypocritical in what you're saying here.
Yeah, leave it to Vince to say something stupid. Leave it to Vince Russo to say something stupid. He does that on a weekly basis. He's like Dave.
Bro,
him and Dave are kind of alike in a lot of ways.
That's what I'm saying. He bags on Dave Meltzer so much, but there's many of times, and a lot of the times, ladies and gentlemen, that and again, this is no disrespect to Vince Russo, but a lot of the stuff that he says,
no, be disrespectful.
All right, well, it's my Long Island bias because we're both Long Islanders. But still, yes, I'm sorry, Vince, but you're still a dickhead. You're still a dickhead after 24 years. Bro, we should have put the title on Arquette. We got on TV Guide, bro. Yet people tuned out. Nobody wanted to watch the show again. Then you went out of business.
Exactly.
Speaking of someone that going out of business and just, my goodness. So we'll get to more AEW stuff. And this is why people just shit on the unprofessionalism of this. And we'll play the Conan clip in 2 seconds of here because, my goodness. MJF, Britt Baker, and Alicia Toot. So MJF, there's so many different conflicting stories of what's going on here. So it's Britt Baker was talking shit about the fact that she didn't get TV time. They had the 1 hour match, 59-58 to be exact, with MJF and Will Ospreay. Alicia Toot overheard this, and she's like, don't you be talking shit about my man. And she went and told MJF, and then MJF, some stories circulate that he barged in. But for me, I'm just going to say he went in. He talked to Britt Baker and said, hey, do you have something to say to me? And then something popped off. And then she called Alicia Toot a stupid-ass bitch, or to told her to shut the fuck up. And apparently Will Ospreay had said, Britt, like, why are you starting this drama? And then MJF punched the hole into the wall as he's walking down. So your thoughts on this fuckery of backstage? They can't catch a break because last year it was Punk and Jack Perry. Now this time it's MJF, Britt Baker, and Alicia Toot.
Yeah, and apparently this goes back to a few years. This isn't just anything recent.
No,
so apparently they've had a falling out and they've had a beef for the last few years. So anything that happened, that should be between them two. And
Right.
but the fact that Alicia actually put MJF in the middle of it, that's the bad part. Is that it had nothing to do with him, but yet she made it that he needed to come to her defense.
And apparently Britt Baker got a 2-week suspension. And all right, but I know it's like a slap on the wrist. Tony, and we'll get to Conan in a minute. Tony, you got to start being a boss, man. We've said this many times. You got to start saying, "Hey, knock it the fuck off." And
yeah, they gave her a 2-week suspension, and then they come back the following week and say that she'll be back the following week.
She'll be back.
So that was her 2-week. That was her 2-week suspension.
That was the 2-week suspension. And they're like, "Well, how come MJF doesn't get any point in this? You know, this is just very sexist that they're only suspending the woman." What? Like, all he did was just go in and confront her. There was no, it's not like he hit her. He just said, "Hey, what's the problem here?" Britt Baker was the one who instigated. She was the one doing a lot of this. MJF was just like, "Hey, if you got something to say it to my face." It's not like he put hands on her. I think Britt Baker was more the aggressor here after HR had to do a check on this. Magma. I'm tired of this, man. It's just like, stop fucking beefing. And Tony, actually stop fucking protecting Britt Baker because she's one of your girls. Like, just, he ignores the living piss out of me, because this all could be avoided if, again, it all comes down to Tony too. If he would just step in and say, "Hey, knock it off, or there's going to be consequences for your actions." Enough. But he doesn't do that. Because we got to be boys.
But I thought he had this whole disciplinary
committee.
That he has, and Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson is part of it. So I don't know. It's it's just like I said, it's Britt and Alicia's beef. Alicia put MJF in the middle of it, and we got what we got.
And what we're also going to get now is Conan. So this was a question asked on the Keep It at 100 podcast. And he talks about Britt Baker and a certain Brandy Rhodes. Let's play that clip.
Tell you how much of a problem she was, right? And not get into details, but hold the thought. One day when I can, I will. Right? All right. So one of the reasons that Cody left, amongst many, was there was problems between Brandy and Britt. Really? Yeah, I remember that. She sounds like a troublemaker. Yeah. Sounds like a troublemaker. And Tony always takes her side. Yep.
I feel like Brandy stopped going to the shows or something because of it, right? Isn't it?
You'll find out one day.
Yeah.
Well,
I think I've actually heard. I think we've heard that before, though.
Have we? All right.
Well, bro, if you go back into history, like if you Google the past 5 years, there's a lot of breadcrumbs there about.
It's hard to remember everything. You know what I'm saying?
So there's a lot of people, right?
Okay, so what I love about how they brought that up, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, that whole exchange that happened, Britt Baker's got an ego to her. Like, and here's the thing: if she were to go to WWE, that ego would get in checked, because you think how she would act, that would apply and fall well with the NXT locker room. Oh hell no! Oh hell no!
No, and I'm pretty sure her husband would tell her the exact same thing, because he knows what it's like being there, and I could see him going back, and I can see her going with him at some point, because Adam Cole ain't doing shit in fucking AEW.
He got brain busted by MJF, and that was the end of that feud.
The end of the feud. It didn't even continue. It just stopped. Again, back to start and stop.
Well, it's like, well, how do we know how hurt Adam Cole is or whatever? Then don't do the fucking shit. Don't blow it off so quick. But you had to do something. You know what I'm saying? And we're not even going to get a match. It's just MJF back to being a dick now. And it's like, all right. Oh, this also ties into MJF, because the person that he looks to be feuding with after Will Ospreay is Daniel Garcia. But there's been a lot of rumors and innuendo, to quote Conrad Thompson. There's been a lot of rumors about the fact that, well, not this one's not rumors, but the Lucha Brothers on their way to WWE. Yes, please. Put them on Raw or SmackDown. Put them in the NXT Tag Team division against Nathan Frazer and Axiom. Give me the Lucha Brothers against Legado del Fantasma. Put them with Andrade. Put them around whoever, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, and it looks like Rey Fenix actually stopped his any promotions for coming or doing any more appearances after his contract is up in September, at the end of September. So they're WWE bound, which is pretty much it. It looks like it's inevitable. Daniel Garcia is probably going to be another one that's probably going to leave.
Ricky Starks.
Scorpio Sky, whose contract is up, I think sometime before the end of the year. If Ethan Page is already there, you could pretty much guarantee Scorpio is going to be there too. So
yeah, Ricky Starks, Scorpio Sky.
Ricky Starks will be another one. You know, it's Hook will be another one that'll probably end up there too. So Wrestle Talk actually gave their 8 people that can go. The names we just mentioned are on that list. There are a few others, so go check that out.
My thing too is if you're Scorpio Sky, even if you don't go to WWE, like him in the TNA X division would be superb. Ricky Starks is just, it's inevitable with what's going on with Cody. Lucha Brothers, yes. Daniel Garcia is an interesting one for me because that makes sense if they write him off, because it's like, well, we don't know. Is he going to stay with us or is he going to go to WWE? And personally, I would put him on NXT. You could put him like as he goes towards like the North American title. You could do stuff to like really build him up.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point in time, you know, we'll see where everything goes, you know, and down the line, a lot of these guys will end up being faces in WWE.
Now, Mustafa Ali has said to be done with Impact. Now, for if I'm Mustafa Ali and I see the landscape with AEW, and again, we say this every time, everybody starts off hot, then they get lost in the shuffle. Do you think he's going to go to AEW, or do you think he's going to go back to WWE under the Triple H regime?
I think it's going to be a different landscape for him in WWE. But I think he'll probably end up going back to TNA, even though he says that he's done with them. I think there's still a lot left for him to do in TNA, because you know he is their X Division champion. So I think that there's still some more he can do there, and with Nick Nemeth actually getting the championship and him eventually dropping it whenever he does, I would like to see Mustafa Ali as the TNA champion at some point.
I agree wholeheartedly, just because his heel run, his character would be great for a world championship material. And I mean, we're coming upon the 4-year anniversary when he was leader of Retribution. So what a 4 years it makes, though, right?
From where Vince had him 4 years ago to where he is now. Yeah, it's much like Mia Yim. Mia Yim isn't what she was there then. She's pretty much what she was when they had the Mae Young tournament.
Mae Young Classic,
you know, Mae Young Classic. Sorry, the Mae Young Classic. You know, she was busting her ass there, and then, you know, of course, she left and came back, and look, she's still doing the damn thing. And by the way, hey Trips, you need a mid card for the women, and not some damn speed title, please. Good Lord.
We got the women.
Which, by the way, yeah, they're actually doing a tournament for the women, which I think Chelsea Green is probably going to get it. So
I hope so. I was actually going to ask you about that. That was on my notes, because we have the men's speed tournament. Now we got the women's or speed on Twitter. Yeah. I think that was great. Oh, and people shit on speed, but I got to say, for the Twitterverse, it does like a lot of views. A lot of people watch that each and every Wednesday. What, the afternoon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon. I mean, even though a lot of people already know what's going on, I mean, and people post about it, but I mean, if you watch it and people are actually paying attention to it, yeah, it pretty much gets more views than I don't know, AEW.
Speaking of AEW, we mentioned his name, but he's not going to be appearing. Maybe not. But as far as AEW goes, here's one McMahon we will be talking about. Shane O'Mac and Tony Khan had a meeting at an airport in Arlington, Texas.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk. Here comes the money. So
here comes the money.
Money. So let's talk about this as I close the screen for a brief second here. So I want to say this to you, because the photo will be inserted. Say it to
me then.
I will. Photo will be inserted here, my friend. So Tony Khan's face of just like, what? And then Shane's just looking like, yeah, we're talking. So your thoughts on that photo surfacing and Shane O'Mac to AEW? Do you see him being involved in AEW in any way?
Yeah, Mercedes was the one that said that she took the picture.
Yes.
You do? Yeah, I want to get credit for it.
Woo!
Yeah, I want to get credit for being the photographer to take the picture. Woohoo! I like that Shane would be somewhere else other than WWE because we don't know what it would have been like had he went to, well, I don't know, when he bought when he had quote unquote bought WCW from his dad. You know, it would have been interesting to see him in another company and actually doing something different. So now we may actually get the chance to. But I think it's more so Tony picking his brain and him wanting to be part of what's going on. But then again, All Out. Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, my thing is, like Bully Ray stated on the statement, that Shane is just like, hey, talk about working with their dads. It's pretty much they were picking each other's brains. If it happens, cool. If not, what have you. But I mean, it's interesting just to see the fact that we saw Shane O'Mac talk with another company, that being AEW. As long as he doesn't wrestle, because a lot of people are like, oh, what about him and Darby Allin doing the crazy stuff? After what happened with him and The Miz at WrestleMania, I don't ever want to see Shane McMahon.
It didn't even happen. He did one move, and all of a sudden he collapsed on the ground. And then, of course, Snoop Dogg did what he did, and hey, kudos to Snoop Dogg.
Kudos to Snoop. And speaking of McMahon's, we'll go to
Snoop at the Olympics. Man, is that some shit? Snoop and Martha Stewart at the damn Olympics. Snoop over there rolling some blunts and smoking them all up in the crowd. I love it.
I will be putting that in this photo as well. But Snoop and Martha Stewart at the Olympics. Also, the Olympics.
Equestrian. Oh my God. You gotta, dude, just put up a barrage of freaking Snoop pictures at the fucking Olympics because that shit was hilarious.
And also, speaking of the Olympics, and I mean, we mentioned the Hulkamaniacs and the Trumpomaniacs. This I will just mention briefly. Logan Paul's dumbass tweet about the young lady who beat the other girl in about 45 seconds. That woman is a female. That wasn't
Logan. I thought that was Jake.
No, Logan posted it too. He told everybody.
Logan posted it too. Oh, okay.
The root of all evil, as he put it. I'm sorry, Logan. What did you film that got you in trouble with YouTube? What?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
Like, hello? And also the fact that this was a woman, a biological woman. You could say how much testosterone, whatever she had her, but she was a woman. She is not a transgender. She is a woman who beat another woman in the Olympics. So shut the fuck up, people.
Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, and, you know, why is it that it ended up having to be that they had to dig into her past, dig into her, you know, birth files, dig into everything to find out that she was, guess what? A woman.
A woman. That's the bullshit that we have going on. But speaking of more bullshit, and we'll get to Vinnie Mac, because it's been a while since we talked about Vinnie Mac on this, but he came into the news once more. The judge denies Vince McMahon motion and Janelle Grant lawsuit. Judge Jeffrey Meyer has denied Vince McMahon's request to uphold a court-ordered stay in the lawsuit brought by Janelle Grant. So the filing indicates that on May 30th, Grant has agreed to pause the lawsuit for 6 months while the federal investigation into McMahon proceeded. You can read it below, just that she's filed the motion to enforce the court's stay order, and the court has received and reviewed various sealing filings with respect to the motion. The motion stems from a bill discovery action initiated by Plaintiff Grant in Connecticut State Court against certain non-parties to this action. The court does not interpret its entry of the state order to apply to state court proceedings that are outside the scope of discovery prescribed by the federal rules of civil procedure governing the conduct of discovery and federal court litigation. Federal district courts do not ordinarily regulate or sit and review proceedings in state courts, and the court's stay order did not purport to extend to any state's court proceedings. If there is any objection to state court proceedings, relief should be in state court rather than in this court. Accordingly, the court denies defendant McMahon's motion to enforce the court's stay order for failure to show that there has been a violation of the court's stay order. It is so ordered, signed by Judge Jeffrey A. Meyer on August 6, 2024. So what are your thoughts that the motion has been denied in the Janelle Grant lawsuit?
Boy, that's a lot of courting.
It is. I think you're
like saying how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood.
This is true. I think we're going to get more into the Vince stuff, and I got to say, it's not going to be good.
It's just a matter that in short,
yes.
What happened is that the Vince's lawyers tried to file a motion to pretty much throw out what Janelle Grant was trying to look for. What She was just trying to get medical records from the doctor that Vince had sent her to.
Mm-hmm.
So the judge, since they tried to throw it out, the judge said, nope, it's going to be admitted. So we will eventually find out what she went to the doctor for and all those other things as this continues on and on and on. So in short, that's what it was.
I know, and then my thing too is I look about it with Vince, and again, it's been 2 years now, Mr. Paul Morales, officially 2 years since he announced the retirement, and then now 2 years later, where we are, how the product is flourishing and thriving, and there's no more Vince, and which is a plus. Which again, huge plus that there's no more Vince McMahon. Get him the fuck out, and let's just see where this continues to lead and go for Vinnie Mac. My thing is, it's not going to be good, and you know it's not going to be good. But I will say this: what is going to be good. And I want to put this into the forefront here. So we'll talk about the Great American Bash fallout. We mentioned Roxanne Perez and Thea Hale. We mentioned, yes, Thea Hale, baby. Wesley, the heel turn. And the other thing we will mention, because we said his name and he appears, I
believe in Joe Hendry. Oh.
Yes. Him and Joe Coffey. What a match.
Oh, my God. It was by far, I'm sorry, you know what my favorite spot was in that match, and it wasn't even, it was one of those here.
He did the Eddie Guerrero light
He did the Eddie Guerrero, and that fucking
what he's so good. He's so good, and then he's like, I think I'm gonna stay here on NXT for a while. I am very open and much more for, because we saw it on Impact with him and Wolfgang. I am loving me some Joe Coffey and Gallus feud. I'm loving it.
I like that he's still doing the tapings for TNA, and that it's helping the product, because now all of a sudden you're bringing that WWE audience to TNA, and of course you already have Nick Nemeth there, who people already know, but now you're bringing in more of the audience into seeing what they're doing over there. Yeah, it's tapings and whatnot, but people are interested and people are wanting to see what's going on.
My thing too is again, this has probably been the best thing for them, the relationship with TNA. Again, we've said this many times, and we equate it to AEW because this ties into it. It's like, you could tell me about the highest buy rate with Kenny Omega and Rich Swann. You could talk about Kenny Omega and Sami Callihan. You could talk about the Good Brothers and Matt Hardy and Private Party. But that promotion, that overall relationship was so one-sided to show that AEW was way better than TNA. It was very selfish. This is, all right, we're going to put Izzy Dame on TNA. We're going to have Roxanne Perez and Jordan Grace. We're going to have Joe Hendry. We're going to have Frankie Kazarian. We're going to have all these people come through. The Rascals. We're going to have Izzy Dame go over there. We're going to have Tatum Paxley go over there. Like,
I'm seriously just waiting for Josh Alexander to come over to TNA. I'm seriously just waiting for Moose to come over to TNA. Because anything, Giselle Shaw. I mean, we already have Jordan Grace coming over. I mean,
yeah, she's open.
Masha Slamovich could be another one that'll end up coming over, and of course, Natty signed her new deal, and of course, I'd love to see her go over to TNA and wrestle all the women that are there too.
Same, and I mean, you had Giselle Shaw, like you mentioned, who's interested in wrestling Roxanne, which I think would actually be a very underrated match. I am loving the fact that we get to see like Josh Alexander, like if Obafemi, him and Josh Alexander, I'll take it.
Him and Moose too would have a
Moose
banger. Just not PCO, please, just not PCO.
The wedding with PCO and Steph DeLander.
Oh, you gotta love that. You gotta love that one, man.
It's
fucking
funny,
Matt, fucking Matt Cardona.
All right, now I'm not gonna hate on
some good shit.
Yes, I'm not gonna hate on PCO, but yeah, no, please don't bring his old ass over to NXT, please.
Yeah,
please.
Don't.
Oh, but I'm loving it. I can't say nothing good about this relationship. But another thing I got to mention that I'm loving about NXT, not only the progression of like those cats, but Tony. I love the fact that we got Tony D'Angelo and Charlie Dempsey, and that Ren Sinclair is a part of the No Quarter Catch crew now, because she adds a lot of entertainment, but it's also seriousness, and I love that they added her to the group.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, to say the least. And the fact that she came over to Tony, or he came, he came over to Tony to ask her, you know, how can you get rid of somebody? And he's just like, wait a second, that's a woman? Nah, I ain't touching it. That's your problem.
The best part of the setup is Charlie Dempsey, like he mentioned, goes over to Tony D'Angelo and he's like, "That's a woman. I'm not putting my hands on a woman." And then first of all, let's put over Miles Bourne and Kendall Gray and everything that we saw. Miles Bourne is hilarious, getting flipped by Kendall Gray, and he's all for Ren Sinclair. Like, he is hilarious. And then he's like, "Oh, you didn't hear?" That was the best part of that whole thing. He's like, "I'm sorry, what'd you say?" And he goes, "Oh, you can't hear him too?" I died because Miles Bourne is actually deaf, number one. But number two, the fact that they used that as a pun, it was hilarious. And he can make fun of himself. It was great.
Yeah, exactly.
And can we even put over the fact that Tatum Paxley, who is just so underrated, number one, with her character and her work, but number two, the fact that it looks like we're going to get her and Karen Q, a.k.a. Miss Wendy Chu. I'm for it. It looks like she's going after Kalani now. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's going to be that match between her and between Kalani and Tatum Paxley. Oh my God, that was a really, really good match. Very, very underrated on the show for a Great American Bash. And then Wendy Chu beating the shit out of her afterwards. Oh,
I'm here for it.
I'm here for it too.
That's the thing, and we talk about this each and every week, folks. Don't sleep on NXT. Like, Shawn Michaels is literally cooking. Like, he has been knocking it out of the fucking park, and I can't wait till they go to the CW.
Oh, that's going to be interesting too, because apparently they announced that the first two shows, one's in Chicago, of course, CM Punk's going to be featured on it, and then the other show the week after is actually going to be in St. Louis, and of course we're going to get
Randy Orton. Can Tony not have a meltdown because they're going head to head that day? Because you know what's coming.
Yeah, because it's the first two episodes they wanted. I think the one with in Chicago is going to be taped, I believe, and the one in St. Louis is going to be live. And I think a lot of people are actually pushing for the show in Chicago to be live instead of it being taped. So we shall see what happens. October 1st.
But Tony, don't have a meltdown on the 8th.
Yeah.
After that, don't do what you did last year, Tony. Don't do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn, Tony. Learn. Speaking of learning, Tony Khan is in our Tony Khan. We're actually going to bring up Tony next. Okay, give me 2 seconds. But before we even get to Tony, I figured we play this next just because this also goes before I get the Tony clip up. We're going to talk about WWE, and I think this is one of the first places we should start because you brought this up. I saw this on social media.
I did not.
Yes, you did. You brought this up, and I'll tell you why you brought it up.
The present and the future of Irish wrestling. Through grit, determination, and heart, these men and women have left it all on our canvas to get us to where we are today. But soon, they will meet their judgment day.
So shout out to OTT Wrestling, man. We got Finn Balor and JD McDonough coming back.
Yeah, I see that they're actually going to Ireland. Yes. And they will be up there October 25th, I believe. Is what I said?
Yes. Yeah, what I love about it too, as well as, and we mentioned this so many times, the fact that we're getting more of them on the outside, like the OTT Wrestling, and then we mentioned GCW, but like how cool is that just to see each and everything that we have from like the overall working relationships, like them going back there is big because of the Irish wrestling tie-in, but isn't it great to see just the outside partnerships? Because we mentioned this so many times. If this was Vince, they probably wouldn't be doing the show.
Yeah, you know what? It comes far few and in between for Vince to actually allow people to get outside of their company, but this is a great working relationship for Triple H to actually have them out there doing stuff with like Noah and All Japan. You know, it's great for them. And then of course the women going over to Stardom, or I mean not Stardom, to over to Marigold, and it's great to see them branching out to different places. So the fact that they're forging these partnerships with everybody, you know, just makes for better wrestling. I mean, and that's for damn sure. And of course, this quote by one Michael Cole.
So Michael Cole said this about Vince McMahon before we get to Tony. Michael Cole opens it about working with Vince McMahon, stating that at times Vince has said inappropriate things to him. I'm not going to lie. There have been times where he has said things to me that were inappropriate. I would go back to Gorilla after the show and get in his face and tell him that was bullshit. He respected that I did that. Over the next few years, people still didn't accept me because they looked at me as being a puppet for Vince, and I think some of that probably was true. So, I mean, he can admit it because Vince is in your ear, but at the same time, he's fighting back and saying, hey, Vince, I don't fucking deserve to be talked about like that. I think Vince would have a respect for the fact that he did stand up to him. So, I mean, am I shocked that Michael Cole revealed this? No. But I think also the gloves are off since he's having fun now with Pat, and he can be more open and loose.
Yeah, but you look at how, and even Joey Styles actually mentioned it too at one point in time, saying how difficult it was to do a show when you have an earpiece in your ear and Vince is telling them specific things as to not to do. And that's what used to piss him off a lot. I can understand Michael Cole. People used to believe him and say, I was his puppet, I was doing this, I was doing that. But when you work at the company that he works with, and he works for Vince McMahon, you're going to do what he's going to ask you to do. Is it always right? No. Is it always perfect? No. Is it a bunch of bullshit like he just said? He's over there screaming in his ear, you know, telling him a bunch of crap, inappropriate stuff. Is it great? No. But I mean, a lot of people give him more respect now because at least now he's speaking up about it.
I think the fact that, too, like you brought up a great point with Joey Styles. Joey Styles has said, it's like when I came in, and they brought me in at Taboo Tuesday 05, and then they took me off WrestleMania. Because if you remember, the only match that Joey Styles called on WrestleMania 22 was the Edge and Mick Foley hardcore match. Yeah. So Joey Styles was like, I was a play-by-play guy. I know how to call play-by-play because that's what he did with ECW for many years. He wasn't calling it like a sports entertainer. So he had to sit with JR to learn about sports entertainment and storytelling with how to call that particular announcement, much like JR has done. And then you hear about Mick Foley, who left in 2008 because he got tired of it saying, say it, and yelling in his ear. Renee Paquette's another good example of the fact that they were supposed to have Braun and Tyson Fury in Saudi Arabia. And then Renee's like, he screamed at me because I said something wrong. He's like, you ruined it. God damn it. You ruined it. So we have many different instances and aspects like that. So, yeah, I'm happy that Michael Cole's speaking out about it, as you should.
Yeah, and I think that it's good when anybody speaks out about, you know, the crap that they used to have to go through with Vince. So, you know, it's good because then we finally get to see what's on the other side of this of the earpiece per se.
Speaking on the other side, we go to the other side as far as company goes, and this is a response to a tweet from Mr. Paul Morales. So we're going to put this out to the forefront, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to read yours first because I thought it was hilarious. This moron, I swear. Imagine Vince taking to social media a few times a week and griping about fans calling out WWE. The tribalism that goes on and in the same breath saying that Vince is a narcissistic, manipulative, sexist womanizer. Now imagine him actually giving a shit. Tony Khan, there are a lot of people out there who don't want to see AEW succeed and spend a lot of time trying to stop it. They're sabotaging him. They're sabotaging him, Paul.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. They're coming out.
And you got guys, Bully Ray, for instance, who said, I would like to come in and help you. And what does Tony do? He doesn't take them up on the offer. He has guys, and I've stated this before in the past, on past episodes, to where I've said he has so much experience with the guys that are on his roster. Jeff Jarrett, who's owned a company, who could help him out immensely, but yet he doesn't take advantage of it. And that's a Tony problem.
So this is what I will also add on to your point here. This is what Bully Ray said, because Tony Khan doesn't listen to criticism, and everybody's going at Bully Ray. Oh, well, like, did he ask for your critique? I'm like, it's only the fact that I've only been in the business for 20 plus years, and I'm a veteran, and I've worked with all these people, and I've worked with Paul Heyman closely on ECW, so I think I know a thing or two about behind the scenes and production, and, hey. So Bully Ray writes back and says, I would venture to say that the overwhelming majority of anyone who earns a living within the pro wrestling business want to see AEW succeed and are not trying to stop it. Most like myself would like to see it improve on all levels and thrive, which is what we've all been saying. But the problem is when you have a dude who has his head so far up his ass that he can't see the light of day, and Tony Khan, and all he wants to do is go, there's not much you really can do.
And there isn't. And it's either it's going to fail miserably and go out, or he's just going to go continue to keep shelling out money, millions and millions of dollars, and to produce crap. And nothing of this bullshit that he's trying to do it for some sickos.
We're doing it for the sickos. So my thing that I love about this too as well, and I'm going to bring this up to you because it makes me laugh so hard, because we're going to get into the WWE stuff now, Mr. Paul Morales. Here we go. Roman Reigns finished the story with Tama Tonga. So here's the tweet from 2018. Got the snitch. Your bark can't seem to get over your yard for me to hear you. My yard has no fences. Come test your skills here anytime. Jealousy is a bitch trait. What album is that from? I actually doubled your little videos for you in like 4 hours. You should be thankful. Thanks for the laughs, though. And then the photo was present day of Roman dropping that steel steps on Tonga Lowen's gut. I laughed so hard because I remember that exchange from 2018 between those two. And the fact that we got to see this now years later is just great to see them now in the storyline together. It's
great to see both brothers actually be involved in something, because I swear after Bullet Club in New Japan, they weren't doing anything.
No.
And it's refreshing to see them be involved in something in the storyline that is the new bloodline versus Roman Reigns, and which will eventually be the old bloodline, or a version of the old bloodline that'll eventually come down the road. This pipeline.
What I love about it too as well is this also brings us to the Bash and Berlin card. Like, I love that we're doing Gunther and Randy Orton, because everybody's like, oh, Randy. I'm like, Triple H said that we're going to get back to this, and we're getting back to it. Randy's like, hey, you beat me, but did you really beat me? And then Gunther's like, you know what? I don't need you to give me an RKO out of nowhere, because you know what? Go ahead and try. And Randy's like, that's fine. I don't want you to see it coming. I'll come right to your face and do it. The exchange that these two had, much like we mentioned how AEW doesn't have us locked in to 2 weeks to all in, but I am hooked. I am intrigued to see Gunther and Randy Orton now, because you've heightened it for me, and I really want to see them have that definitive match now.
You remember when the draft actually meant something?
I like that you brought this up. The draft, when it was Vince is just like, you know what, fuck the draft, who cares? We're just going to have him go on the show anyway. But why this makes sense in what Triple H is doing here, you're having Gunther go over to, and Randy Orton go over to Raw because he's got beef with Gunther and he wants the title. You have A-Town Down Under go over to Raw because they're SmackDown talents, yes, but they had the situation with Jelly Roll and the Awesome Truth at SummerSlam, and they want to have the tag match. Makes sense. So they're actually showcasing and highlighting the brands without just saying, oh, who gives a fuck about the brand split?
No, but I mean, they make it make sense. Unlike Vince, who would just swap people over from one side to another just for the sake of just to do it. But it needs to make sense. And of course, Triple H doing this for the sake of storyline and continuing on something to help build to Bash at Berlin.
I think my thing is too, man, and I look at it from so many different perspectives. Like with what we saw with Raw, first of all, we'll talk about him. It's been over a year. We've been like, what the hell's going on? Odyssey frickin' Jones comes out of nowhere. And I will be much critical, Paul. I was not a fan of the New Day Final Testament stuff. I'm like, okay, it's boring. What are we doing here? Let's go. Let's move it. But we finally have a thing where Karrion Kross is like, I told you so. I told you that Kofi only cares about himself. You're on the back nine, Xavier Woods. Nobody cares about that. He doesn't care about Xavier Woods. I care about you. Open up your eyes, man. And we have Odyssey Jones. Double sidewalk slam to the Authors of Pain. He comes out looking like a badass. They go to the back, and Xavier's like, so you two are friends. Planting the seeds because Xavier Woods is say, you cannot break us up. We are here forever, 10 years strong. You are now finally teasing that Xavier Woods is probably going to give in to Karrion Kross, and there's going to be a turn in the New Day because he's going to be pissed that Kofi is bringing Odyssey Jones into the group to replace Big E. I am for this, and it makes Odyssey Jones's debut worth the wait.
It works.
Yep.
And unless Big E actually gives him, his blessing, to be in the group, I can actually see Xavier actually following Karrion.
With how they're doing this, again, we talked about it being slow at the start, but Triple H is all about putting on the long game, right? This is it. You have me invested in the Final Testament in the New Day, which I thought I wouldn't see. And besides, the other star that happened, Bronson Reed with 6 tsunamis onto Seth frickin' Rollins. They have Punk chase after Drew, continues that feud, and now we take Seth out for a little bit. And what I love about it too as well, not only does it elevate Bronson Reed, but this also holds off until we finally get CM Punk and Seth Rollins at WrestleMania next year. So it makes sense all around.
But it elevates something we've mentioned about Thea Hale and Tatum Paxley. It elevates them. It puts them into a different category now. Now we see them in a different light. I want to see what Seth and Bronson actually do. And Bronson Reed is really, really great in the ring. He can work even with smaller guys. And it's not like he's just a big meaty man slapping meat. He's just one of those guys. But he's still short guy, stocky, but he can work with people. He can work with anybody. It doesn't matter their size.
No, and what I like about it too as well is like this whole Raw with elevating Odyssey Jones and Bronson Reed being so athletic that he is. We have the continuation of Sheamus and Pete Dunne. Don't call me Butch. Like, I'm enjoying that and what we're seeing the trajectory of Pete Dunne while Tyler Bate is out. So there's so many things that they're doing with Raw that I'm enjoying. Braun Baker showing the legitimacy to the Intercontinental Championship. Jey Uso and Sami Zayn now wanting the tag team championships with the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley absolutely headbutting JD McDonough and that South of Heaven. My God, like Damian and Rhea against Dominic and Liv. I'm here for it. That promo from Finn. I've been waiting for a year to do this. You told me to be a man. Well, here I am. I am the man, and I've been waiting a year to do this. Like the Judgment Day feud. But everything that is encompassed by this great show that we mentioned, from the storytelling and the trajectory, led us to the main event. And I got emotional because the now newly named American-made Chad Gable and the Creed brothers. Will Ivy Nile suffice and go with them? We shall see where that goes. But the Wyatt Six come out. They're playing Bray Wyatt's music. The Lantern in the chair. Just walking down, doing the entrance. He sits in the chair. Nikki Cross on the floor. Goosebumps. And then the afterwards of Bray and I'm sorry, Bray, God rest his soul. Bo and Eric Rowan just crying and everybody embracing. Dude, what a moment.
It was a fun match. It was a fun, entertaining match. And seeing everybody get involved. Of course, Eric Rowan, Dexter Lumis, Joe Gacy, actually, everybody get featured in the match. Everybody have their moments in the match. It was very emotional, especially to see Bo sitting outside in Bray's chair, holding the lantern, in front of him. And it's like holding an urn. Mm-hmm. It's literally like holding an urn in your hand, and you know what it represents to you. And that's the light of Bray Wyatt. So for him, it was an emotionally charged night. That afterwards, seeing him and Eric Rowan just embracing in the middle of the ring, and I know that their tears were shed. Seeing the video afterwards on Twitter, it was all emotional, period.
My thing too is, and here's what I love about it. And first of all, to the idiot fans that were like, oh, you think Chad Gable is fine with signing with WWE afterwards and re-signing? Yes, he was just in the main event of Raw. and he's in a high profile match with one of the most high profile acts on the show. Shut up. And number 2, great, just awesome stuff. And people were complaining that it wasn't on the SummerSlam card. The SummerSlam card was fine. You need something for Raw. You know what I'm saying? You can't. Not everything has to be on a pay-per-view. And this was fine.
This isn't Vince trying to stack up a card just for the sake of stacking up a card. If you look at SmackDown the Friday before, and you look at the matches that were on the card, you had a women's tag team match. You had the SmackDown or the WWE tag team championships that were on the line. So those 2 matches actually set that whole weekend in motion, for SummerSlam. And you got 2 title matches there. You had the title matches that you had at SummerSlam. And of course you get such a great Raw afterwards. And of course SmackDown this past Friday was really, really awesome. Of course, to see Roman Reigns in the ring and hitting that interaction with Solo and of course Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa in the ring, that shit was badass.
I think what I liked about it too is as well, and you talk about the Vince era, like not stacking everything up on the SummerSlam card. I think what I did appreciate, besides that great Raw afterwards when we got there, but like you mentioned, Roman returning was set perfectly, beating up Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, taking the Ulafala, him and Solo Sikoa staring each other down. The Cody and Kevin interaction, first of all, Kevin Owens' promo in Nick Aldis' office talking about, you know what, why does Roman deserve it? You know what, there's so many other guys who deserve it. And Nick Aldis is like, well, I'm looking at the guy who deserves it, so it's going to be Cody and Kevin. And again, we talk about people bitching. It's like, oh, but, Shane Strickland did an open challenge on Collision, but Cody did the same thing to Kevin. And it's like, no, here's the difference. Cody and Kevin have a story. Kevin has helped and backed up Cody against the Bloodline. Him, Randy Orton, and Kevin backed him up against the Bloodline. They just came off a 6-man tag, and Cody's like, hey, you're one of my best friends. You deserve this. I'm rewarding with you this for having my back. So let's have a match for the title. It's not at all compared to what Shane Strickland did in that bullshittery last night. Excuse me. So
yeah, and then of course you look at Randy, what he's getting on Raw, and of course he and Gunther actually had that interaction at King of the Ring. So it again back to something that furthers the storyline. It has to continue on, and unfortunately AEW doesn't do that.
Exactly, and like you mentioned, the whole SmackDown was great with Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. Tiffany really, you could see her tease and planting the seeds that she's going to cash in on Nia, and Chelsea Green made it apparent with Piper Niven, like, hey, she's going to turn on you. You're going to cash in. I know you're going to do it. Like, just, I know you. And the fact that we're also elevating Jade and Bianca and Naomi against Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, and Bianca and Blair Davenport, I'm here for. I'm here for everything that was on that show. The trajectory with Andrade and Carmelo Hayes, LA Knight and Santos Escobar now is going to be fire for the United States Championship. Top to bottom, man, all I can really say is everything. For those who have not seen it, watch all of Raw, watch all of SmackDown. The 3 hours go by in a blip, and it's awesome because everything makes sense. Same with SmackDown. It was just a good week of wrestling that really enhanced and advanced a lot of stories that shaped up to the Bash in Berlin card, which 1 p.m. I'm okay with. At least it's not like Australia. I'm fine with a 1 p.m. start time for Bash in Berlin. I'm cool with that. I know that's early morning for you, Paul.
I know. I'm over here at 7 a.m., man. I'm still trying to pick mocos out of my eyes.
Yeah, man. 10 a.m. for you, 1 p.m. 1 p.m. for me. At least you'll have a cup of coffee. So that's
I'll have a cup. I will have a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee. Cup of coffee in the big time. Oh, yeah. So one other thing before we get cream of the crop. Yeah. So one other topic before we get to the passing of one Mr. Kevin Sullivan. I have to talk about this because it happened. Bobby Lashley was on the Laboratory podcast, and he talked about the difference between Vince McMahon booking him and Triple H booking him.
Connection with Vince. Vince understood me.
Mm-hmm.
Vince was big on like this show. He looked at people that were stars,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw that in me. And there was a lot of little nuggets that Vince would give me all the way throughout my career and tell me different things. So Vince just looked at me. He was like, I can tell Bobby works his ass off. I can send him anywhere around the country to represent the
brand.
company,
Yeah.
the brand.
Uh-huh.
And he just looked at me as a star, so I like Vince.
So we going with Vince.
I haven't really had too much with connection with Hunter. Hunter has his guys, and I've tried to, but we haven't really worked enough together to even get to know each other.
For sure.
Okay, so here's my issue, Bobby. Hi, Bobby. Now, it's not because he's 48, but like, dude, they're focusing on the younger generation. And I'll say this: I have Obafemi. We have Obafemi. Like, you're kind of, we don't really need you, man. And I don't mean to put it that way, but it's like, Bobby, be quiet. Like, you've had a great run, and people are saying that Bobby was overlooked. We talk about this. The feud with Goldberg, like, he beat Goldberg. He's won the Universal title, the Intercontinental title, the U.S. title. He's had a great second run within this company. You know, the stuff that he did with the Street Profits. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything worked. Everything was good. Bobby Lashley has been killing it. Everything that he touched from his inception back in WWE in 2018 to where he is now has been great. So people be quiet. And also, Bobby, they're focusing on the younger generation. There's nothing wrong with the spot that you were in. And Vince McMahon also mentioning that he was good to you in 2024. There's a difference. Vince liked the big guys.
Very much so. And unfortunately, Vince isn't there anymore.
Yes.
You know, and I can see the gripe that MVP has. You know, it's Bobby is 48 years old. It's not like he's 38. Had it been 10 years ago, yeah, it would have been perfectly fine because he would have been at that prime age to where everybody, and it's not saying that Bobby isn't in shape. Yeah, he's in phenomenal shape. But the thing is that that's not the route that they're going. It's either you're going to be there to enhance talent or you're just not going to be there. And at this point in time in his career, hey, if you want to go somewhere else, hey, by all means necessary, go somewhere else. We already saw MVP show up at GCW saying that, you know, that he might bring the Hurt Business there. Hey, cool. Kudos to you. But WWE is going in a different direction, you know, and you don't need to spite everybody there because they choose not to have you there.
I think, again, like with MVP, and we mentioned this so many times, I mean, Bobby Lashley, I mean, he's nostalgia. Like, and I mean that in the possible respect. He's a veteran, but you have to understand the trajectory and direction that they're going in. Like MVP, with what he said about Triple H, and I'm just like, be quiet. Because, again, I go back to Obafemi and all these talents. Like, he's pushing a lot of African-American talent. Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, hello, Naomi. So a lot of MVP saying, look, if you don't want to be there, much like you said, fine. Go to GCW. Go to TNA. Don't go to AEW. Go to TNA. Go be the Beatdown Clan there, the Hurt Business, whatever you want to call it. Like he was there. They had one of Bobby Lashley's best runs besides WWE was his run in TNA. Let's put that out into the forefront. So go back to TNA. Do what you do there. That's fine. Do GCW. But you have to understand, Bobby, like they're not looking at you as a main event star anymore. They look at you as the nostalgia act, the veteran to help the younger talent. And Triple H doesn't hate you. Triple H has nothing against you. It's just this is where he sees you on the card. And it's not a bad position on the card.
Nope, not at all.
But what we do have people who are on the card and who are the bookers and who everything. We will bring it to our last topic. Rest in peace to one of the great wrestlers, the Taskmaster. Everything that he did, that he touched, that was so gold. Man, Kevin Sullivan, God rest his soul. Really, just it broke my heart to see it. I know he was ill, but passed away at the age of 74. Everything that he did with the Doom, was it the Dungeons of Doom, and there's no Hulkamaniacs here, brother, and all that in WCW. The feud with Chris Benoit, the feud with just everybody who's working with Dusty Rhodes back in the day. Like he's had some legendary bouts, both inside the ring and outside the ring. Creative mind, just a creative character and human being, man. God rest his soul.
Yeah, I think Eric Bischoff touched on it best to say that he was having issues with Hulk Hogan, trying to figure out that third man, you know, for the NWO, and he needed to figure out how to turn Hulk Hogan a heel, and because that wasn't his forte, that wasn't what he knew about, and he was barely in the process of knew how to make faces. In other words, that's what knew how to make baby faces in the company. But getting them over and getting them to be showcased in a specific way. So Eric said that he went to Kevin Sullivan and he told him, he goes, well, my idea is I want to have Hulk Hogan as being that third guy in the NWO. He goes, how can I turn him heel? So what we got is basically a Kevin Sullivan thing. How Hulk Hogan became that that third guy in the NWO. How it came about was all Kevin Sullivan. So Eric pretty much put it out there saying this is what he did. This is how he produced. Not only him, but of course we talk about the Dungeon of Doom. We talk about over the years for a lot of the heels that have been in WCW. Kevin Sullivan was one of those guys who had that heel mentality for the business. So Dusty was the baby faces. Kevin Sullivan was the heel guy. So
I think what I respected about him, not only that, the fact that he got Hulk Hogan a job to Arn Anderson and put him over in WCW was great to talk Hulk Hogan into doing that. I mean, he was a professional with everything that went on with him and Benoit, which we're not going to go into detail, but we all know what happened with him and Benoit and Nancy. But being a professional and just working the feud with him, being as professional as he was, the infamous feud with Brian Pillman, the I Respect You match with, I will bring this up because Lexus King, you scallywag you, on Twitter, Lexus King wrote, "I respect you, Booker Man, with a heart. Rest in peace." I like the fact that he paid tribute to both his brother and his father, Brian Pillman, and as well Kevin Sullivan. So I really thought that was a very nice tribute by the one and only Mr. Lexus King, Brian Pillman Jr. Yeah. I think everything that we're seeing now from the influx, I mean, Kevin Sullivan, dude, I remember Ring of Honor, him, BJ Whitmer, and Punishment Martinez, better known as Damian Priest, like, he was just so good at what he did, and he's going to be missed. Like you mentioned, Bischoff said it best. There's so many great things to live by with Kevin Sullivan. It breaks my heart to see, but I got to say, I think his legacy and memory will live on.
Yeah, and Tommy Dreamer actually told a story on Busted Open, and he was talking about how there was an assassination of somebody in the company, and Tommy was going about how he described it. Of course, you've got the video right there of what Tommy said, so you could play it.
I'm in the Bahamas. They had a real political coup. They cut off the head of the leader of the government. And then there was this man who looked just like the guy who beheaded another person. And Kevin Sullivan cuts a promo with this guy with him and says he's bringing him to the Bahamas and he's going to be in his corner. It's making every newspaper. The guy who looked like this guy no shows because he's afraid he's going to get killed because he probably was.
Right.
So he walks over to a 22-year-old Tommy Dreamer. He goes, "You're going to put on this mask. You're going to wear this jacket. And when the time is right, you're going to hit the ring." And I'm like, "Who am I playing?" He goes, "The guy who beheaded the other guy." And I'm like, "What?" I run to the ring and I take an inside out bump where I'm outside. I get pulled in. I take the pin. And the moment the pin happens, the fans rush the ring and I'm in a real fight. The police are not stopping it because I'm portraying a man who murdered another man on like a political person. So I have to run to the back. And during the me fighting my way to the back, I finally get to the back. Everybody's gone. They all left. And I'm in the Bahamas.
That is a funny ass story. That what a way to get heat. What a way to get nuclear heat.
Leave it to Kevin Sullivan to do some dumb shit like that.
Oh, but you gotta love it. It's old school, and I mean, there's just that guy is just was so good. And I will say this:
he's one of the great producers in wrestling history. So
I will say this: I do have to give kudos to WWE because you saw it on SmackDown on Friday. What a hell of a tribute they gave him, right?
Yeah, that was really, really touching of them, and it was really, really classy of them to do that.
I will say this: rest in peace, Kevin Sullivan, and thank you all for checking out the weekly review from our good, bad, and ugly and memory of some of the great stuff in professional wrestling, the trajectory, the story, the arcs, and the shut up, Tony, shut up, Dave edition of the weekly review. I hope you guys enjoy our critiques, our analysis, and what we do each and every week, hence the weekly review. We are back in better than ever, to quote Eric Bischoff's theme song. Paul Morales, before we close this out, let them know where we can follow you on the social media fronts. Go ahead, Mr. Paul.
Of course, you can find me on the RWT page, of course, on Facebook. Of course, then again, you can follow me here, Deadman of RWT. Of course, you can find me that on Twitter. You can find me that on YouTube. Of course, you can find me that on TikTok. And unlike me, I'm not on Pornhub like freaking Michael over here.
Oh boy, the porn is hubbing, and we're hubbing along. So
Yeah, exactly. So, Mr. Michael Larkin, so floor is yours, sir.
you can check me out, SM Show 1 MCL92 on Twitter, Larkin_92 and MLarkinMB on Instagram, StephenMikeShow.com, LFCfights.com. Subscribe to Mike Larkin92 on YouTube. Folks, 941 subscribers. Let's get to 1K. We're almost there. We're getting there. We're in there like swimwear, and keep subscribing and liking and commenting on what you like about these shows and what you don't like, because we'll take it. We're men. We'll take the criticism. We'll take our shirts off. We'll do this shirtless. No?
I mean, I can. I mean, I'll. Oh, wait, never mind. My wife said no.
So if you want to check out the weekly review playlist, it's on my YouTube. Check out Deep Into the Heart of Wrestling with myself, Robert Davis, and Nicola McDonald, Daniel Crimmins, and I with Uncaged, the Stephen Mike Show, LFC podcast, On the Mic with Mike, Pop Culture. Just, we're all there. And please subscribe. Links will be in the description. We in there. We everywhere, baby. So with that being said, for Paul Morales, my name is Mike Larkin. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Weekly Review. Stop sabotaging us, please.
Yeah, stop sabotaging us. Sabotaging us. That's it. All right.
Deuces. I'm going to go get some Taco Bell.
I'm out here.
You want to go to some Taco Bell?
No Taco Bell.
No Taco Bell.
Toro.
Me, maybe. All right. See you guys later.